it's not every day that I get to interview a wizard, but today is that day. My dear, dear friend, Anadea Judith, said, you've got to have a conversation about the goddess with Oberon Zell. And so I'm so, so happy to have Oberon here today. He is a devoted priest of the goddess for over 50 years. He's the co-founder of the Church of All Worlds. He's written several incredible books about wizardry, about neo-paganism, and all sorts of magical subjects, which I'm sure that he will talk about in our interview today. He's also the founder and headmaster at the Grey School of Wizardry. How cool is that? And I've got him right here. So nice to have you here. So nice. Oh, and another amazing thing that he's done is he's had unicorns. And I'm hoping, Oberon, that you'll talk about the unicorns, because when I was a little girl, I think I'm a little bit starstruck by you, Oberon. Honestly, I just love wizards, and I believed in unicorns when I was a little girl. And I remember this right up when I was 7 or 8 years old. And I brought it to my mom and dad and said, I knew unicorns were real. I knew it. Look. And it must have been written by you. So I'm so happy for you to be here.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So do you think that was actually you? I can't imagine anyone else having unicorns back in what would have been 70s or 80s?
80s. Our first unicorns were born in the spring of 1980. And that's all we did for the 80s was for the first few years, we traveled all over North America at every Renaissance festival. We were in every newspaper, magazine, TV show, everything. It was a huge, huge thing. And after several years, our booking agent with the Renaissance fairs got us a 4-year exhibition contract with the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. And they took it and ran with it and made it huge. And they said that it was the biggest biggest attraction they had ever had in their entire history. And at the Ringling Brothers Museum in Florida, there's a huge mural that shows all of their acts that they'd had and animals and stuff. And right in the center of the whole thing is a picture of Lancelot, the living unicorn, who is the star of the entire saga. So it was pretty big. The amazing thing is that only 40 some years later, the world has completely forgotten. Now you talk to people about unicorns and, oh, no, there's no such thing. It's only a mythical beast. But they were real and authentic. And it's quite a saga, really. It's a very, very huge saga. But I can give you a little brief rundown, and that is that my beloved life mate, Morning Glory, who unfortunately passed away 6 years ago after 40 amazing years together, and we shared interests in everything, among which was mythical beasties. And we set out to do research to write a book on the subject. And in the process of our research, we discovered the secret of unicorns, that they had actually been real animals, but they were an art form that was produced by a secret method that had been forgotten, lost, rediscovered, forgotten again several times over history. And each time their appearance in the world was well documented and became legendary, that the appearance of a unicorn heralded the dawning of a new golden age, became a big thing. The last time around was during the Renaissance, 400 years ago, the English Renaissance. And there's tapestries and pictures and images and descriptions all over the place. And we looked at those and we said, we can do this. We can reproduce these exactly as they were. And we had a friend who had just acquired some land up in the country. And she said, well, I've got this 220-acre parcel of land and I could use some caretakers. So why don't you guys go on up there and take care of the place and raise unicorns? And that's what we did for the next 8 years. It was It was huge and an amazing adventure. They were incredible animals. But that was long ago, and they've all gotten old and died after having long and amazing lives. And, the world moves on. And apparently it's moved on and forgotten unicorns again. But that seems to have happened recurrently throughout history. The real animals then become forgotten, and they pass into legend and then myth and then fantasy, until somebody rediscovers how to create them again. It just happened to be our turn.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting, isn't it? And that's it. I think there is a resurgence of the unicorn coming back, and I'm supporting that. I'm supporting that movement.
Well, we've been thinking about maybe it's time to bring them back again. Our granddaughter was looking through her mom's photo album, and there was pictures of her mother as a little girl with the unicorn. She was the unicorn maiden in her princess outfit and stuff like that. And there's all these pictures. I mean, there were calendars and posters and greeting cards. It was huge. And she said, Mom, when you were my age, you were a unicorn maiden, and I'd like to be a unicorn maiden too, So I put together the detailed information on exactly how to do this. And I'm hoping that somebody somewhere might want to pick it up again and run with it, because I'd love to see another generation of unicorns back in the world. But it's a big deal. It's not just a simple casual thing, but I'm all for it, and perhaps we'll see another new generation of unicorns coming out.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that you might have something to do with that, Oberon. Yeah. It's like passing the torch.
Of it. Timing would be good. Yes, passing the torch. That is the whole purpose of one's life at this stage of one's life, is to do that, to pass it on. All the stuff that one has learned in a long life of exploration, it doesn't do any good if you just take it to the grave. You really do need to pass it on, which is why in all the stories, the old wizards are the mentors and the teachers of the young heroes, to tell them what they need to know, before they go off on their mission in the world, whatever that may be. It's a whole thing. This is part of what inspired me to start the school and write books, was a kind of assignment from the goddess to pass it on. So that's what I'm doing.
Wonderful. Yeah, and that's my first question is, what does the goddess mean to you?
Wow. And, that's a simple and a complex question. The simple answer is everything. She really does. She's my whole existence and whole life. Ever since I was a little kid, I was absolutely fascinated by goddesses in stories and myths and legends, and I was utterly devoted to nature. I spent much of my childhood out in the woods, just hanging out in nature. I always related more to wild nature and creatures and animals than I really did with other people. I think I was somewhat on the autistic side there. I just didn't really connect much with the other kids. But the animals, oh yeah, I'd go out and I'd spend hours just sitting up in a tree watching the birds build their nests and raise their babies until they got just used to me. Or so I'd sit there at the base of a tree while the deer were grazing, and they'd come right up to me and stuff. And always had that relationship. Morning Glory and I worked with wildlife rescue, and we had a house full of critters all the time. We had herons and owls and possums, lots of possums. We really love possums, and ferrets and rabbits. And of course, when we lived out in the woods, we had not only unicorns, but we also had deer that we raised up. But they lived with the other deer in the herds, but they knew their names. We'd go out, there'd be a herd of deer, and we'd call out, Kira, and this one deer would come trotting over to be petted and loved on. So I've always related to that. When I was, from a very young stage, of course, I discovered girls. That didn't take very long. And I always thought girls were just amazing and wonderful, and I still do. I think I would have to say that it would be hard to find anybody who loves women more than I do. And if they do, that's wonderful, and it should be. But I've always seen women as avatars of the goddess, as priestesses, as goddesses incarnate on the earth. And it's always been that way to me. In fact, I'm just inspired to be writing a book on the subject of A Wizard's Guide to Women, which we'll talk about this kind of stuff. So that's it. And I had all that mythological background and all the biological background, and I was fascinated by natural history and evolution and all of that, how it fits together. And 50 years ago, in 1970, I had a vision, an incredible vision of the goddess that changed my life and was profound and revolutionized the entire early pagan movement that was just kind of getting launched at that time. And that was a vision in which I kind of, well, I was, tripping actually, but that's what it takes sometimes to have a vision like that. And I kind of fell back into the river of DNA of all the way back to my birth, to my conception, when it was just simply a single cell. It's how we all begin our life, as a single fertilized cell. And I went back to that, and then on back through the genetics of my parents that produced that moment of conception, and on back and back and back and back to the very beginning of complex life on Earth, which happened about 500 million years ago at the Cambrian explosion, 544 million years ago, when the nascent single cell life that had been hanging out in the oceans of Earth for 2.5 billion years and nothing else, just like a whole batch of unfertilized eggs or seeds waiting to be fertilized for a very long time, since the very beginning of water on the planet. And all the water on Earth came from space, and evidently so did life. And 500 million years ago, that life was fertilized in the Cambrian explosion, and suddenly there was incredible radiation of every kind of complex creature. But that moment was exactly the same as the fertilization of our body that creates us, the moment that a sperm and an egg of our parents come together to create a zygote. And that zygote then proliferates and splits and goes off and creates an entire complex organism, which we all are, of trillions of cells, all specialized and organized, and a whole being, but still a single being. We are a single being, despite the fact that we compose trillions of cells. We are a single being because it's all the same protoplasm. It's all the same DNA, because when cells divide, they just put the same stuff into the two next ones. It isn't like, they go off and they're separate. It's all one. And that realization was so profound that in my vision, I rose up from the earth and I watched the life from that initial beginning spread out across the surface of the planet and to become the beautiful living biosphere that is our Mother Earth. And as I gazed down in wonder at this phenomenon, she opened her eyes and smiled at me, and she said, "Now you know me." And, tears squirted from my eyes, and I just fell to my knees in awe, in reverence. And I said, "I shall ever serve you." And from that moment, that has been my entire devotion. And eventually, I was even able to create an image that replicated that vision. And this is my image of the millennial Gaia, which I created 22 years ago, and is now all over the world. Thousands and thousands of images of this in several sizes. This is the smallest and original version, but she's now available in a 14-inch and a 24-inch size, and we're working on getting a life-size version out, which I really look forward to. That's kind of the goal here, is to have her fully life-size. So that's kind of that. And I spread that vision. I wrote it all up, and I started lecturing about it and doing art and talking about this everywhere, and it caught on, and it spread throughout the community, the whole concept of Mother Earth and Gaia and all of that unity of life as a single living organism. And a few years later, a British biochemist named James Lovelock came up to a similar conclusion, not from the inside out like I did, but from the outside in, looking at the Earth from space and seeing it as a single living organism. He saw it like the atmosphere as if it was the shell of a snail or something produced by life. But he didn't quite have the same concept that I had of it all being a single organism. But his idea, which he called the Gaia hypothesis, spread and caught on and galvanized the scientific community. So we had these two parallel and convergent visions, of the living Earth, that both informed the world and changed the world, I think, in an amazing way. And that has become the underpinning of both natural science and biology and evolution today, as well as of the entire pagan religious movement, which is now the second largest religion in North America, and by the surveys and estimates at over 4 million people, which is huge. And I'm pleased to have had my little part in fostering and inspiring that movement, because I'm very proud of it. So that's the story of my connection with the goddess, and I will be offering to people a poster of her at the end of the show. So there you are.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very excited about that poster. So the poster is going to be part of the All Access Backstage Pass. So everyone that's listening, definitely sign up so you can have that free poster, because it's beautiful and very, very powerful. The representation of it has so much meaning and significance as well. So it's not just a beautiful picture of the goddess, but it's very symbolic of the connection of the goddess and the earth, Mother Gaia. So that's my next question, is if you could explain a little bit about that connection and how important it is for us to be reconnecting with and awakening our own connection with Gaia and with our own goddess and our roots. And one more thing is that you're also offering, I can't remember exactly what you said. It's something to do with the goddess as well. So I'll let you talk about that a bit more, Oberon.
Oh yeah, I will also include a little write-up, a little article that Morning Glory and I did on the subject called "Who on Earth is the Goddess?" And so